Are we live? Let's hope we're live. It's the first time I've been live in a year and a half, I believe. So I'm sure, just fair warning, we're probably going to come across a lot of technical difficulties. Coffee break. Because there's a million things you have to get going on here. Plus, I'm also streaming a very different way than I used to. I'm using OBS. It's like this crazy software, and I had to change some settings on it. And then YouTube also changed. But it looks like we are good. Right now in the chat, we have Richard Cheney. He said, good to have you and Westworld back. Thank you so much. Nancy. Hello, Nancy. Nancy's here. I don't know how many people are going to come to this stream. I think it's going to be a slow build. Until, we get more people funneling in, I just want to talk about the channel. So, I got to say, this first week of Westworld, I have loved it. I think a part of it is the show. It has that mystery. It makes me engaged. I want to keep coming, making videos and talking about it. So I've been really enjoying that, and we'll be keeping up that schedule every single week. I have a breakdown video that I made. That'll be up tomorrow. I'm also debating on making a prediction video for every episode. I used to do preview episodes, so I want to do that. What else? There was another thing, actually. If there's some Game of Thrones fans here, I was thinking, if I started watching Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 6, and I started with that episode, and I watched all the way to the end of Game of Thrones, it would take me to the House of the Dragon. So I figured that would be pretty cool, because I haven't watched Season 7 and Season 8 of Game of Thrones in a very, very long time. So I'd be interested in diving into that and just kind of reacting to it because of the shit show it became. But let me know what you guys think about that. In terms of the live stream, I know a lot of you were asking for it. But to be honest, we'll see who turns up. In terms of YouTube, it's been a dead account. I've had a dead YouTube account now for, I would say, a year and a half. I haven't been posting. So I don't blame anyone, if we don't end up getting the viewers to come to the live stream. It'll take some time to build for sure. But that's all I have to say about that. The only other thing really is I was looking at getting into reviews for movies. I reacted to Thor, but we have Thor coming out, so I might dive into that. I might do a review, unless Westworld, I'm doing 5 videos a week. I was also debating on, I watched the Elvis movie, and I was debating on reviewing it. But at the end of the day, I don't know, I feel like most people wouldn't watch it. In terms of me, I thought it was an amazing movie. Very emotional movie, very good movie. Highly recommend it. And the actor, Austin Butler, who played Elvis, he did an amazing job. It was incredible. But how many people do we have in the chat? Right now we have 2 people. That is not a lot. We're used to if we have, comment if you guys are here, and then we can have some form of discussion. If we don't have enough people to make a discussion, then I'm just gonna rant and rave about each character, and then we'll see who comes online. We have Fabio. Fabio says, have you watched Obi-Wan? Puke face. Oh man. I watched the first 2 episodes, and then I started to really enjoy watching the clips of the show, because I think Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan was pretty badass. There were a lot of really cool things about the show. But to be honest, I'm not a Star Wars fan. And I never watched the prequels. I never had anyone show me the prequels until I was older. And then I grew up with the prequels. I grew up with the 3 worst Star Wars movies, so I was never a fan. And then they came out with the new trilogy, and they didn't even know what they were doing. So there's nothing about Star Wars that would make me like it. But what's funny about it, the one thing I will say is the only thing I found redeemable about Star Wars was Obi-Wan. So, like what I have seen about the show, it was pretty awesome. I liked Obi-Wan. I liked Ewan McGregor playing him. But in terms of like the fandom, in terms of the fandom of Star Wars, like I don't know if it broke any continuity or like messed up any canon of the show. Like I'm not a Star Wars fan, so I feel like a lot of people who are upset, like really sad about Star Wars, are sad because there were fans who knew all the canon that was destroyed with the Obi-Wan show. Nancy says, "Did you watch The Boys?" No, I haven't. I think I should. There's a lot of shows like I really should pick up. I've really just done Westworld and Game of Thrones, so I think I need to dive into it more. That being said, like I've really enjoyed doing YouTube like these last couple weeks, so I'll definitely look for new things. But I know the schedule is going to get crazier because we got Westworld. Westworld's going to take me to Game of Thrones, but then Lord of the Rings launches with Game of Thrones. So I'd be covering two fantasy shows, and I don't really know anything about Lord of the Rings. So that will be very interesting. But without further ado, let's talk about Westworld. I got my coffee to enjoy. I saw in the comments some people found it boring. Some people weren't into it. It wasn't as like engaging to them, whereas other people were like, it's a return to form. This is amazing. So my opinion on it is it was a great episode. It got me really excited to obviously talk about it. Like I've done 3-4 videos already, and I'm doing a live stream. So like there was something that it did right that kept me back. But obviously it's not going to hold a candle to episode 1 of season 1. The first episode of Westworld was like really special. It was like diving into the world. You had Delores waking up again. You had Abernathy's scene, and then he gets put in cold storage. Like they couldn't compete with it. But other than that, like it was a great episode, and it just makes me wonder about the writers. Like I don't know what their plans are. I don't know if they sat down and wrote. I don't know if they sat down and planned out like every season of Westworld and what it's supposed to be. Or I don't know if they purposely returned to their roots and they're just figuring it out. I hope that they have a plan. It just felt like season 3 happened, and then now they're completely reverting back to the basics. Which is weird because like with shows, like they progress forward, and in a weird way, it's like Westworld is progressing forward, but they're taking a step back to follow the same trope. So I don't know. Richard Cheney says, is Caleb's daughter Frankie an important character? Do we see a grown-up Frankie with Bernard in the previews? Surely her target practice will come in handy. Chekhov's gun training. Interesting. That's very interesting. So I actually have a theory that I have in my breakdown video that's going to come out later today. Or sorry, tomorrow. It's going to come out tomorrow. Unless I get like really excited and I'll put it out today. But we haven't seen Bernard, and my thoughts on Frankie were a couple things. First of all, the timelines don't match up to me. Because 7 years, we learned with Caleb, 7 years ago the riots happened. 7 years ago was the end of season 3. So that happened. Caleb's daughter is 7 years old. Frankie is 7 years old. And Maeve says she's been in hiding for 7 years. So it's like, you're telling me that Caleb participated in the riots and then met and shacked up with his wife and had a daughter instantly. It doesn't make any sense. So the timelines are flawed. Like there's got to be something wrong with the timeline. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Plus Maeve is having visions about Caleb being injured and her like, touching his injury and all that stuff, right? So there's that. Plus, Caleb's daughter looks like she could be Maeve's daughter. So, obviously Maeve's a host and that can't happen. But like there's got to be something deeper there, and to me, another reason to justify it is because Caleb is completely in the pattern of a regular person. He found himself a normal life, a completely normal life where he has the wife, the kid. Even his wife says that. Like, you have a beautiful house, a wife, a kid, and you're not happy. It's because he's an outlier. So it's like, why, when Rehoboam is destroyed, Caleb immediately after 7 years, he immediately falls into the typical life that is ideal for Rehoboam. So that to me was weird. Now, moving on to the second part of your comment with Frankie being a part of Bernard with the previews. So I actually haven't watched the previews yet. I'm going to watch the previews tomorrow, and I'm going to make a video on that probably Friday. But it's cool because it goes hand in hand with the theory I had that's going to come out tomorrow in my breakdown. And that is, I think Maeve and Caleb are in the real world. I think Delores is in essentially a park surrounded by the tower, overviewed by Charlotte, right? I think the real secret is the Delores that we see is like hundreds of years in the future. And I think once you step out of that perfect city that Delores lives in, it is the future. So I think Bernard isn't going to wake up from the Valley Beyond and interact with Maeve and Caleb. He's going to wake up from the Valley Beyond and find Delores, or what's her name? Christy? Chris? I forget her name. But he's going to find her. Because, and that's a whole other conversation that I'll get into later with the Judas Steer and Charlotte and her role and what her objective is and what that means for the show. But if Bernard comes back and we see Caleb's daughter, that would be pretty cool. That would be, I would love that plot point. I'm going to go watch the previews and then I'll make my video on that. But anyways, what else do we got? Shelly's here. Hello, Shelly. Nancy, programmer of video games. What's up, buddy? You said it's been a long time. It has. It's been a very long time. Fabio says, I think rather than telling me the best story possible, they were trying to outsmart the viewers, which ruined season 2, season 3. So, I agree and disagree. I think with Westworld, what they kind of settled on was, the first thing was they did timelines, and then that kind of became their thing. So I feel like they always tried to bring in that gimmick to every season, even though sometimes it's not necessary. I think that gimmick was great for the maze and achieving consciousness. So in season 2, when Bernard is trying to find consciousness, I think that was a good tool because that's what he was doing. But I don't think they should do timelines for timeline's sake. It should only be relegated to the maze because that's what that is. In terms of season 2, in my opinion, I don't want to sound like a disgruntled fan, but my opinion literally is season 2 started off great. It was great, but they didn't do what I wanted them to do. So that's my problem with season 2. Season 2, I have mixed feelings about because I loved it, but they always talked about the door, and Ford gave William the game of the door. And I think the reason why I'm annoyed about it is because we had Akichita and all the hosts say that this simulation is now the door. You're going to walk through this invisible thing and you're going to go into a simulation and that is the door. Even though the whole season they were friggin' setting up the door as the passage from a human to a host body. Fidelity testing. And we see that in the post-credit scene with William and his daughter, Grace, right? And to this day, I think that's a part of the reason why I'm upset, is because I said since the beginning, I said the door, William is the only candidate who can effectively go through the door, passing through a human to a host body. And they never did it. They told us that the door was a simulation, and they never answered the question about Ford's game. Ford said he made a game for William. And to this day, it hasn't been answered. So that was my problem with that. but it delved into the technological discussion of simulation. Like, what is the simulation? Like, yada, yada, yada. In terms of season 3, they dove into, I guess, simulation, but also artificial intelligence. I'm trying to remember season 3, because to be honest, like, season 3 wasn't very memorable. Yeah, so like it focused on Rehoboam, which was technology, which was good. But in terms of your comment on trying to outsmart the viewers, which ruined season 3, I would lean more towards it ruining season 3, because I think they try to bring a parallel between humans and hosts, and I think they directly conflicted against statements that they made before. Because season 1 and season 2 basically had a thesis that humans were simple. When Delores went to the Forge, the human simulation place, she discovered that the code of humans can be made into a tiny book. And if you know the characteristics of the person, you can create who they are. They essentially have a formula to humanity. Humans are simple because they cannot change their core code. Their core biology is survival. And then season 3 took that and threw it out and said, no, there are outliers like Caleb who can change how the world works. So then they went down that rabbit hole. So, you know, we'll see what happens. The only worry I have about this season is they could totally be trying to pander to being like the smart show that you have to predict and theorize and you don't know what's going to happen if it's completely unnecessary. I hope that this season ends with something actually intelligent, like something that makes sense, you know? Because season 1 was perfect. It was a host achieving consciousness. Season 2 was about the door. So moving from one state of being to a simulation to another, passing through the door. So I hope that this season has a definitive thesis of something, whether it is like quantum computing and data storage. So that's something I also talk about in the breakdown, where William went to these data servers and wanted to purchase them all. And they said based on they upgraded the power grid and they could keep them running for like 100 years. The reality is if you have a type of quantum computing and you have Westworld, which you can encode a human, then essentially any person in the world is completely enslaved to the owner. And that's why you're in a prison of your own sins, right? Where if they have your likeness, if they have your character, then they can recreate you and use you anytime they want. And so you're constantly in a prison. So that's a concept. And then that's a whole other discussion, is diving into what Charlotte wants and what her motivation is. Oxen says, I did find it a bit boring. The first episode of season 4 didn't really introduce us to really any interesting characters. I also don't really see the point of introducing Caleb's daughter so far. Yeah, totally. Season 1, I remember after I watched episode 1 of season 1, I was blown away. Like, I was completely blown away. Abernathy's scene at the end, amazing. I liked Bernard. I loved Delores. Like, Maeve was okay. But yeah, it is a bit different, especially since like we have Delores. Like, I enjoyed all of Dolores' scenes and I looked forward to seeing her. But we're not even seeing her character anymore. We're seeing a shell of who he was. Like, we're essentially seeing Delores from season 1. So it's like even the characters that we have that we liked, they're clean slates of what they were. Maeve, I've never been a big fan of Maeve, personally. I was always a big fan of Bernard. In terms of his daughter, Caleb's daughter, like we'll see where they go with it. Like I do like the idea of Caleb's daughter ending up with Bernard. Someone messaged me. Oh, it's work. Anyways, what was I talking about? I think they used his daughter in this episode more to highlight Caleb's character. Like that they wanted to show that he's a man that's stuck in war, and he's stuck in the past. He still has, PTSD, or he still has his struggles, and that manifests in his daughter. The only way I would say that helps his daughter is because, Caleb is an outlier, and that could rub on his daughter, right? So Caleb's daughter isn't this malleable human that Rehoboam can, recycle and reproduce, which is the perfect partner for Bernard, right? So that's what I would say to that. Programmer says, do you think season 3 and 4 still tie into season 2 post-credit scene with Men in Black finding the door? Yeah, I'm, I don't want to toot my own horn, because I could be wrong here, okay? I've recommended people watch my friggin' video called Door to Delores. And I thought after season 2, my theory was disproven. But, and then season 3, I thought my theory was disproven. But then there's always something that still sheds light on it, where I'm starting to think, okay, was my Door to Delores theory, was that a theory that's supposed to, cap off the end of the whole show? Is William finally going to be a host and end up with Delores at the end of this whole thing? That would be insane. So, obviously they're working towards something. When they show William in the end with his daughter, Grace. Is it Grace or Emily? I think it's Emily. With her. It was shocking at the time when we saw it, but now that we're moving to this point, I think we're going to see a lot more of that this time around, and I think that's Bernard's storyline. We're going to see the far future of the world, and I think Delores is a part of that. Dolores' storyline. It's easy for us to look at Delores in the city and think that she's in the same timeline as Caleb, but she definitely... I don't think she is. Richard Cheney says, is Christina, that's her name. Delores is Christina now. Is Christina in the park or simulation? Do Christina and Caleb share the same timeline? Oh yeah, so I just answered you. So no, I don't think they do. I think Christina or Delores is hundreds of years in the future, and I think Caleb is actually 7 years after the events of the riots. B says, I felt the episode lacked the magic that Westworld had, and to compensate for that, they kept reusing elements from previous seasons for nostalgia, but I'm open to see where they go with the story. That's my main thing, is I hope they don't use nostalgia to hold people, but not have a reason to justify the nostalgia. We need... I don't want them using gimmicks. I want them to actually tell a story and have a direction for where they're going. I hope they didn't sit down for season 4 and be like, okay, guys, what do we do today? And they just kind of wrote this makeshift story as a standalone. It has to be cohesive. In terms of, the magic that Westworld had, I do agree with you. In season 1 was special. I remember, too. And it was, for me, it was... That season of Westworld will always have a special place in my heart, because it was a special time. I was at a certain age where a lot of things were happening. I was enjoying the show. The show was new and intelligent, and it made you think, and it was just so different. And I remember making videos, and Trevor, I used to do videos with my brother-in-law, and he was the first guy in episode 2 when William first comes in. He said immediately, he's like, this is not the same timeline. William is the Man in Black. And he said that in episode 2. So from there on out, him and I knew what was what. And we had everyone in the comments telling us, no, don't be stupid. What about this? And if you go back on my Westworld videos, episode 5, episode 6, I break down every timeline shift, because every scene they would cut to different timelines. So for me, just as a content creator, it was special as well. So we'll see where it goes, but yeah, I don't know. Programmer says, Christina is a new host entirely, in my opinion. I don't know if I agree. Because she clearly has she has everything that Delores was, like the hope for more beyond the life that she leads. Her nature is the same. It's basically taking Delores. In my opinion, it seems like you took Delores as a character from season 1, the Delores that was given to her, the story, and you copied and pasted it to a modern setting. Plus, this is another thing I'm going to get into. In the first episode, Delores, or Christina, is a storyteller, and you have this guy harassing her because she wrote him a bad story. And if Christina was not based on Delores in any way, there wouldn't be a random host or person that would hold that much significance. The reason why I think she's the storyteller, it's like the Ford dynamic. And I saw immediately, like, this guy that's harassing her has a lot of William parallels. Like, the guy lost his wife, his family. She ruined his life. And that's essentially what she did with William. When William came into the park, she took him by the hand, and they fell in love. And when he found out that the love was fake, it ruined him. And she wrote his story, and she ruined William, right? And so that's the first aspect of it. The other aspect of it is they say that you only live as long as the last person who remembers you. And Delores is the last park goer, or sorry, the last host. Or what am I saying? She's the first host that was created. And she has all those years of memory. That's how she created Bernard, right? She made Bernard in Arnold's image, and then she made some tweaks. And she has a purpose for Bernard, and that's why he's going to come back in the future to Christina. What was I going to say? She has all these memories, all these stories that she can recreate. So now for me, it's discovering why is she needed. Like, she had 5 brain modules, marbles, and we have Charlotte, who has one of them. We have Lawrence, who is still around. I don't know if he was taken. Plus, we're acting like Charlotte can't just recreate Delores out of thin air, because Charlotte is Delores. She would just completely take from her own brain module until a certain extent, right? Until Charlotte's experiences started corrupting who she was. So, I think it's definitely Delores. Nancy says, yeah, we need to see Bernard. Yeah, I know. Episode 2, we'll probably see Teddy too. The programmer says, maybe when Ford was talking to William in season 2, it's actually Delores in 2 different timelines helping his fidelity test. I need to think about this for a minute. When Ford was talking to William in season 2, it's actually Delores in 2 different timelines helping his fidelity test. Yeah, so I don't know if I would go that far. I just think the only person who truly knows William is Delores. Like, that's it. He was his most self with Delores. And that's, I feel like, I just don't understand, because, like, my Daughter Delores video, like, some people said this. And they just don't agree with me, where they think the Man in Black is this evil guy. And it's like, well, you do realize that him being evil is in Westworld, and it's predicated on the idea that when the hosts suffer, they're most real. So I don't think it's a coincidence that he came back to the park over and over again and then started to make Delores suffer, because he could never return to the Delores that they had. He could never return to the love that they had. So he made her suffer just to feel like she was more real than she ever was, right? And that's like the tragedy of William, is he never felt like he fit in to his own world. He belonged to another. And he even said that in season 2. He's like, I belong to another world, and that's Westworld. And you know, and that's why, like, when I saw the fidelity test in the post-credit scene, and it was his daughter, to me that's not William. You know, like at that point, you're creating the Man in Black. You're creating a weapon. Like you're not creating William as a character. The only person who knows William is Delores. So, Mr. W says, I think we will see parts of the world in dust. Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're going to unpack a lot of that this season. And that's what's going to be weird about the timelines is, you know, we have essentially the new present now, which is 7 years after the riots. And then we're going to have the far, far future. And I think Delores is kind of going to be the weird tether. And I think that, I could be wrong, but I feel like that's going to be the big twist. Is it's like, you think Delores is in the present, but then she walks outside the walls and she's in a complete decimated desert where she sees Bernard. Because I think people still can't wrap their head around, like even sometimes I forget. It's like we forget that they're hosts. So we forget that there can be like a small city, like an echo chamber of people, and it seems completely modern and fine. And Delores is still there and she looks great, and Bernard's still there, but they don't age. So we forget that it's like, oh, okay, it could be it could be hundreds of years in the future. Like we don't know. Mr. says, Caleb's child will be grown up and interact with Bernard and Ashley. Stubbs. Yeah, so someone else said that. So I need to watch the preview. I really want to see that. So I'm gonna watch the preview later, and then I'll give my reaction and breakdown later. But I like that. Westworld's returning to their timeline gimmick, so that's fun. Vic Disco says, hey Max, glad you're back. When Westworld finishes, will you review 1899 this fall? It's from the creators of Dark. I don't even know what that is. I'll have to check it out. I don't know. I'll let you know. Richard Cheney says, is the homeless man's drawing of the tower a callback to Maeve's drawings of the hazmat suit workers cleaning up the dead host bodies? Yeah, so I see that as it's twofold, right? So it's people. Maeve's drawings of the guy in the hazmat suit was really her accessing her reveries. So she accessed her previous memories, and she kept writing it down, right? And really, that's the maze. And my interpretation of the guy with the tower, it's literally everything has been adapted to fit this modern world. So like when Delores drops the can of jam, it's not a can of jam, she drops her phone. With the maze, I don't think the maze is going to be the standard symbol, even though we did see it in this episode. I think it's going to be the tower. In Westworld, you had Akichita scratch the maze in different places because he wanted people to be able to see that symbol. He put it in people's skulls. He put it under tables. He put it like in dirt. Like he did all those things. And this guy promoting the tower is essentially the equivalent of that. And I think that's how they're going to differentiate this season from the other seasons. Is like the main objective, I don't think, is the maze or consciousness. Because they've already done that. Like they can't just rewrite the same show. So now the target is the tower, and understanding what the tower is. But that's the thing is the two kind of go hand in hand. So if you look at the maze, you have the man in the middle of the maze, right? And that's an interpersonal, like that's a personal thing where you have the maze of the mind and you're trying to find your center self. This interpretation, I believe, is you're going to have the maze, which is the park. It's more of an external thing. The maze is the park that keeps people busy. At the center, instead of the man, it is the tower, and the tower oversees people in the maze, making sure that they never find their way to the tower. There's a reason why we never saw the tower in any of the city landscapes. It's weirdly hidden. I don't know why. And that goes right into Wyatt. So there's quotes from season 1 where Teddy talks about Wyatt. And he said that Wyatt died and came back so many times, and he basically wanted to keep the center of the maze for himself. So what he did was he built a house, and he built a walls around it so nobody could reach the center of the maze but him. And that's essentially what Charlotte did. I think Charlotte reached the center. She built the tower. The tower is now the house that Wyatt has built. And people always said Wyatt was Delores. And now it's Charlotte, because it is Delores. It's a variant of Delores. And now she sits at the tower safeguarding the center of the maze. And she's using these people like puppets. And they said this in season 1, and it's actually happening now. So that's where I think they're going to go with that. Nancy says, what did you think of the graffiti on the wall? Robot controls humans, human controls drone. Yeah, so when we saw Caleb and his daughter shooting cans, there was a scene of a robot with a controller, and he was controlling a child. And the child was having fun playing with the drone. So I think you can take it at face value, and you can say that obviously their brain was not in their control. So like you have people in today's society were distracted by day-to-day life, right? So in that distraction of day-to-day life, we don't realize who actually controls the strings, right? Like we get addicted to an app, but we don't realize that there's an algorithm that's controlling our human condition. So in this instance, it was Rehoboam. So Rehoboam had complete jurisdiction and control, even though it didn't seem like it, over anybody. And that's what that was, where it's like you have the drone, which is a distraction to the child, but the child is being controlled by technology anyway. But I think it's interesting that was shown in a scene with Caleb's daughter, because I don't buy the fact that Caleb, it doesn't make any sense. Like I don't understand how the riots happened 7 years ago, and then Caleb has a daughter that's 7 years old. Like it doesn't make any sense. I think in the timelines we're gonna discover that there's probably like a relationship between Maeve and Caleb. Like there was probably something there, and I think that Caleb is trapped in this family life because of Maeve. Like I think if you look at the kid flying the drone and being controlled by the robot, I think you could argue that is Caleb or his daughter, right? Yeah, because the whole thing just doesn't make any sense. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Caleb's like wife is a host, and Caleb was kind of brainwashed into that lifestyle. But who knows? B says Bernard will come back in episode 3 according to IMDb. Okay, well, hey, we'll see. I think he's got a pretty important role, like in this season. Like he's going to the Valley Beyond. I don't know what he's gonna see. It'll be interesting because it's a place where these hosts were able to exist free from anything. So any society that they built would be utopian. And I wonder what answers he's going to get from there. So, I don't know. I'd be really interested to see. I know in the trailers and stuff, we see like the tree on fire, and we see like a friggin' horse. So I don't know. Programmer video game says last season people said that there were parallels to William and Caleb. Yeah, I did too. The parallels between William and Caleb are that they were both people who didn't fit into their own society, and they felt like it was meaningless or pointless. I think the difference is, William played the game for what it was. He was never ever really him. He just did what he had to do to win the game. And I think that's what we're gonna start seeing Caleb do. But yeah, those would say like are the main parallels. And I try to draw a lot of connections between them too, because I was still gung-ho about my daughter Delores theory. And I'm still breathing life into it no matter what I get. Ravi says, maybe they're living inside the Sublime. Oh, the Sublime. So the Sublime is essentially the Valley Beyond. So it's a simulation. That's possible. I know they could just rewrite in another simulation, but you had the Forge, you had the Cradle. The Cradle was simulation for hosts. Forge was simulation for humans. Charlotte could be using that, and they could totally be in a simulation. I don't know, like, why wouldn't you just have a simulation versus making like a real park? Because William, at the beginning of this episode, William was said to be using his holding companies to buy old plots of land of vacant like cities. So it seems like he's got some kind of plan. So I don't know. I do not know. B. So season 3's poster was foreshadowing for season 4. If it turns out to be true, I'll be impressed. It honestly looks like it. What's funny about the poster too is like I was editing my breakdown video today and I downloaded the poster so I could put it in my video, because to me it is very on the nose. And to me I think like that's definitely where they're going, right? And the fact that the city is in the background of the host, like in the sand. Yeah, I think there's for Charlotte to achieve what she wants to achieve, it's going to take decades. And I think we're going to have like a surprise that, like Delores, for example, has been in this far future for the whole time. Vic Disco says, Dark and Brilliant. Oh, Dark. We're talking about Dark, the show. He says I have to watch it. All right. Richard Cheney says, why are the Men in Black and Hale buying up land around the dam and data storage? A foothold for hosts coming out of the Sublime. So my initial thought of it was, they said that there's data there that was taken from him that he can't seem to access because the person who took it, which could be Charlotte, is dead. And what Charlotte took, I believe, was the code for a human. In the what's it called? My buddy's in the chat. He just said great hair. Thank you, buddy. You just interrupted my thought. Damn data storage, a foothold of hosts coming out of the Sublime. Yeah, so in terms of Charlotte, she went into the Forge and took, they literally have a book that says this is a human. So any data points that we get, we can create any human we want. She took that data and stored it away. So you want the data for a couple things. You want to have that code, but then that data also has every human in that society because they're watching every person. So essentially you have every person at your will that you can recreate and use for anything that you could possibly want. And that's the prison of your own sins. They've built a prison where every person who's participated in society. Well, we're getting bots here. But that's the main thing where I think they're going with it is it's they can store and recreate any type of person. I need to think more about Charlotte's vision, what she wants, what she's trying to achieve. I know that a part of it is Delores, is spawning from Delores. So I'm not 100% sure. But in terms of it being a place for the Sublime, that also makes sense. But the issue right now is in season 2, I believe, Delores took coordinates and shot it out to a random location. And only she knows where the coordinates are. But Charlotte is Delores. So Charlotte knows where the Valley Beyond is. And then I guess, yeah, she may want to use it as a foothold for that. But anyways, anytime I see a dam, like a water dam, I expect it to collapse at the end of the show or movie because that's usually just what happens. But yeah, I don't know. Programmer says, and Programmer, thank you for deleting all the Tinder requests. I don't know where those came from. Bernard could be helping Christina find a new purpose. It would be full circle since Delores helped recreate Arnold. To be honest, that's like a genius prediction. Like that's a really smart idea. I think that's a very nice like full circle thing. Where Bernard also has a hand in shaping Delores and see who she becomes untapped by, like Charlotte or any type of different experience. Because, in season 2, Delores had to become the Judas Steer. She had to become like the main leader who causes pain to give people suffering for them to achieve consciousness and that kind of thing. Nancy says, Hale got the Forge data. Correct. Not the Sublime. I just realized Charlotte does have the Sublime location. She knows where it is because she is Delores. And Delores sent away the Valley Beyond into a certain location, right? So she knows where it is. So it's completely possible that she would try and get it again and either store it, what she wants to do with it, I don't know. But either way, like on a surface level, it's valuable because it's essentially a bunch of hosts who aren't tethered to any type of biology or ideology. And what kind of society would they build? So it's literally the perfect formula for a type of utopia. So that's what I think about that. Richard Cheney says, anything going on with all the mirror shots? Christina looks in the mirror 3 times a day. Her Murphy bed turns into a mirror. Symbolic? Or are they just like that camera angle? There's something definitely there. I know when Delores looked in the mirror and there was the when she went out to check the maze, there was like a shadow in the mirror. There was like a shadow in the mirror, and then she looked, and I'm trying to think of the symbolism right off the top of my head. I don't know. Like, I think you could say that, like, it definitely is like a camera angle, modern world thing, where it's like, Delores in the past, like, we're more superficial now, So, like, of course, when they're like, this is the modern Delores, when she looks in the mirror, she, like, checks for a zit. You know what I mean? Like, it's, like, certain things that communicate, oh, this is the modern world. Not to say that mirrors didn't exist back then, but just to say that the culture has shifted to be more obsessive. So that's a part of it. But also, yeah, like I feel like I could sit here and come up with any rationale, right? Like it's a reflection of who she is, of her true self, who she was. Like, who knows? Yeah, I don't know. Vic Disco says, do you think we'll see more of the Man in Black in the Westworld theme park? I miss him doing gunfire stuff. Man, last time he was in the Westworld park, like, I was pissed. Because basically what happened was they told us that he would go play a new game and he would go to the door and it would be great. But literally what happened was, basically what happened was he saw Delores. They were together for a bit and then he got shot. His fingers fell off and then that was it. And I was so disappointed. But then we found out after that he's doing fidelity testing far, far in the future of the same thing he did in season 2 on his journey of the door. So he is still pursuing the door, 100%. In terms of him in the Westworld theme park, it's a possibility. I find that this show always finds a reason to go back to like Westworld to justify the name. So I feel like they'll probably do that. But yeah, who knows? There needs to be a rationale behind it. In terms of the, like, is William even alive? Like, I don't know. And that's what Programmer asked. He says, do you think the real Man in Black in present day is still alive? I would say no, because the Man in Black we saw in this episode had all of his fingers. And it seemed like they definitely killed him. And it seems like Charlotte is using him as a tool or a weapon. I actually think that this show will end with Jemmy Simpson, like the young Man in Black, coming back. I've been saying it. I'm convinced that that's gonna happen. I think Jemmy Simpson is gonna return as the Man in Black, and he'll be like William, and he'll be Dolores's person, and that's what you see in this episode too. Delores was on that date with that dude, and he was saying like, oh, you do NPCs like cannon fodder, like all that stuff, and she's like, no, like I see the beauty, and she's talking about all this stuff. And what happened? She was talking to him, and he said that she was depressed, and she said she didn't see any real meaning in the world, and that's exactly what William used to say. And then after she said that, her date said that maybe you haven't found the right man yet, insinuating that it's him. But there's only one other character that shared that same statement that Delores did, and that was William. So, I don't know. B says, do you believe the host, Man in Black, will be loyal to Charlotte? I feel like he will turn on her eventually, since he was based on someone who used to torture hosts. I wouldn't predicate him changing based on the torture of the hosts. I would predicate his change based on who he really is. And that keeps going back. Door to Delores. Watch my video. Door to Delores. Search it on YouTube. BuzzTox, Door to Delores, and watch it. The reason why he would switch on her is his love for Delores. Like, he was only, if you look at William's whole journey, he was only ever him when he was with Delores. Everything he did in the park was to cause suffering so he could return to Delores being real. He's a very tortured character. He's a character who didn't belong in the real world. He's a character who belonged in Westworld. But he never belonged because he was human. And that was like the irony of his situation. Richard says, ooh, when Delores was looking in the mirror, she wasn't checking for a zit, maybe an invisible fly. That is very interesting. I like that idea. That's a very cool idea. Could show some reveries there, and like I think we did get a taste of reveries in this episode, because when she was being attacked and she like laid down, it like ended, like there was a cut and it was almost like a different time. I could be wrong, but I got kind of those vibes. Vic Disco says, I'm afraid that Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan don't really have an end game for this series. Thoughts? One can only hope. I would have said that Dan and Dave and George R. R. Martin would have had an ending for Game of Thrones, but the showrunners blew it. We think Arya should be the one to kill the Night King. Yeah, I don't know. In terms of Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan, in the beginning they said that they envisioned it being, I believe, 5 seasons. I think that's what they said. So they may be sticking to that. We might have one more season of Westworld after this. Like, who knows? In terms of if they actually have a plan. I think they have an end game. I think they know how it ends. And, like, it would be, like, a big idea ending. Like, you know, the world is run by hosts, and that's it. Like, a new society is born, and it is hosts. And they know that. They just don't know how to get there. So they're slowly... Each season, they focus on a thesis. They focus on a technology concept. They focus on an idea. They focus on how to make it interesting. And then they produce that show, right? But I don't know. I don't know. It does feel like this is completely going back to its roots, but maybe that's a part of their plan. Like it's very hard to say, but what I will say is I think they know how it ends. Programmer says, theory. The final season will probably reveal it's a park within a park within a park, and it loops back to season 1 and turns out to be Ford's new narrative. Damn. That would be, wow, that'd be crazy. I feel like they're looking for any reason to bring Anthony Hopkins back. The one thing I loved about season 2 was you had Delores. When she was achieving consciousness, her whole journey, she was hearing Arnold. And she was trying to find Arnold. But in reality, it wasn't Arnold. It was her own voice. I love that season 2 did the same with Bernard, but his voice was Ford. Ford was talking to him the whole time. And there was a scene that they had together where Ford said, you know, maybe someday we will meet again, kind of a thing. I don't know if that insinuates Bernard reaching consciousness, because I genuinely believe, like, Bernard isn't conscious right now. Like, I don't think he is. I don't think the show established that. So I think Ford could very well come back and manifest as Bernard reaching his own center again. Programmer says, Man in Black don't love Delores at this point, more like obsessed with her. He just needed an excuse to be around her, whether it be making her life in the park miserable. Yeah, like, you know, he's an old guy now. I think I don't think the form William is now is really like true form. Like, at this point he's a puppet of Charlotte. And he's been broken for so long. So he isn't himself because he is so broken. It's just like the guy who's following Delores, you know? Like, you wrote my story, you ruined my life. Like, this. That's where William is. And the fact that guy killed himself at the end of this episode, and the story ends with, like, everybody dying, well, dying symbolically, like the humans die, but you're reborn as a host. William dies. William isn't even around anymore. So, I don't know. Programmer. Oh, he brings up some Game of Thrones. I'll address Game of Thrones quickly. He said, I'm anxious on the new Jon Snow spinoff. I don't know if it will redeem 8. I don't think it'll redeem 8, but it'll get me excited again for Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, I haven't watched it in 2 years, but Game of Thrones, if they just had Jon kill the Night King and they justified Daenerys' turn, then I would have been fine with it. I would have said, fine, it's fine. But they didn't do that. And that's the bare minimum they could have did. The bare minimum, Jon fulfills what his character was supposed to do, and Daenerys, you justify her turn. And they didn't do it. So, you know, I still think there's a good story to tell. It seems like the studio's excited for it, so I think we'll get something good out of it. Nancy says, did you see this season's episode titles? The last one, your thoughts. So the last one is Q Sera Sera. I don't even know what that means. I'm going to Google that. I'm going to give you an answer. What will be, will be. Okay, so the last title is What Will Be, Will Be. What are my thoughts on that? What will be, will be. I don't know. I immediately think of like taking the strings off of the simulation. Like, let it be, you know? It will grow into what it grows into. Like, they have a worry about how the hosts are going to evolve, you know? Like, if you give humanity freedom, there's going to become conflict. There's going to be things that will cause problems. What if this happens? What if that happens? It's like, well, if it will be, let it be. That kind of thing. But we need more episodes to know. Richard says, flies. Remember the first season story? The cattle had a sickness. Her father kills the weakness and burns the bodies to drive away the flies. The cartel boss seems to be infected. Exactly. That's what I mentioned in my breakdown video coming out. There are two representations of flies, and this is one of them, where Delores was having a conversation with Teddy, and Teddy was like, the cows are sick with blue tongue or whatever. And Teddy was like, I would build another farm and put the cattle in the new barn. And Delores was like, well, no, because the disease is still going to spread. My dad built a pyre and burned all the cattle in it, and it pushed the flies away. And the flies are infected. And that's what seems like what's happening. If you look at the opening credits of this season, the focus is the fly. And you see the fly being created, right? So the flies are hosts, they're robots, like they're being used for a purpose. And, you know, it seems definitive that, you know, the flies infected that cartel boss. They've already explored killing people and making them a host. And this guy seemed infected. He didn't seem like a host. He seemed like someone who was corrupted. So that's something they're definitely going to dive into. And they already dove into it a bit in season 3, right? Like, Caleb was able to be manipulated and changed to fit his story, right? So like the technology is definitely there. And as the show goes on, they're trying to communicate that humans and hosts aren't so different. Geez, that's another thing too that they're probably going to dive into. Like there was a whole facility of stored humans, like outliers. They were all stored away. That's something that was not addressed at all. So I don't know if they're going to address that with Caleb and Maeve when they went on that journey, like fighting and doing all that stuff. But that's who knows? Like that's something that they're going to have to address. What else do we got in this episode? Programmer says, does season 4 imply mind control? I can never come up with the best symbol. Like, season 1 was the maze. And the maze was consciousness, reaching one's own center. It was for the hosts. Season 2, the door. For me, it's two interpretations. You have the door that you pass through from human to host, or the door that you pass through from real life into simulation. Season 3 dealt with... what did season 3 deal with? It dealt with artificial intelligence, right? So we have all the data. We apply an artificial intelligence system to it. What can it do? Season 4, the symbol is the tower. Could it be mind control? Yeah, it could be. Because, you know, if you want to imply the maze to Wyatt's story, you know, he built a home and built walls around it so nobody could reach the center. So you build the tower in the center of the maze, only Charlotte or Wyatt is in the center, and she is able to dictate what everyone does and what they do, and she is basically overseeing everything. So I think you could argue that, you know, yeah, for sure, it's a type of mind control. But, like, I don't know, when I say mind control, it sounds a little far-fetched too, right? I just think right now all the pieces are coming together. So if you have William at the beginning of this episode pursuing storage to store a lot of data, and he's trying to look for something that he lost, you have an artificial intelligence system that can predict what's going to happen. And it said human destruction in like 40 years or something. which we will see, which has been destroyed. But we also have the code of a human. Like you have the data of every person that has lived in modern society. So essentially, you're a god. So, whoever holds the keys to the tower is God. You can create whoever you want, whoever has existed that's been documented. You can code them, print them, put them in the world, and that's it. So, I think that's where it's going. Programmer says, Teddy seems to be back this season, but is it actually him? It's like what I said, right? Like, you can't define what is him. Like, is Christina really Delores? It's like, Christina is a facet of Delores. Like, if you take me when I was 20 and put it against me now, is that really me? Well, I've changed. I'm a different person. I have different perspectives, different experiences. But I think the baseline of Teddy could be recreated because, once again, Charlotte has the data, In Charlotte's brain module, she was once Delores, and there were a couple experiences that changed her into the villain that she is today. But in her memory, she has every experience with Teddy that she's ever had. So she can recreate Teddy to be what he was in season 1, right? And then outside of that, you get the experience built on top of it. So it's like, do I think it's Teddy? I think it's Teddy from season 1. I don't think it's Teddy from season 3 or season 2, who is like fighting against Delores. So that's what I think about that. B says, I checked Reddit and no one is talking about Connells and Musashi. Where was Musashi? I don't think they were in it. Connells, I remember him. Yeah, I think they died, didn't they? I don't know if they're going to find their way back. Connells was based off of a human. Musashi was an actual host from Shogun. So I think Musashi will come back. Like, I think they'll use the actor again. I think he'll just take a different form. That's what they're doing with all these hosts. Like, I believe we saw 2 hosts that were from season 1 and season 2. Yeah, so. But anyways, back to Teddy. Richard says, Teddy went to the Valley Beyond. Yeah, he did. They sent, Akichito was there, Teddy, all those hosts were there. And that's going to be a variant of Teddy, right? That's going to be the Teddy that was with Delores, that killed himself. That's the Teddy that went through all those experiences with Delores. But now he's had an experience of being in the Valley Beyond. So that'll be interesting. It'll be like the Marvel Universe. There's going to be different variants of different hosts. Nancy says, so the tagline, so the tagline, adapt or die. Like it or not, hosts and humans are both adapting to their realities. Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Yeah, I think you could say that. I just don't know how far they're going to go with the technology of it, because it's such a rabbit hole. And right now they can already produce humans or they can produce hosts that are like human accurate that can be conscious. So I feel like where the show is going is, going through the door. If a human can truly become a host, then that's the end game. And then what does a society look like of people that are created and not made? And that's the new civilization. And I think that's where they're going. Like, what else can you do? But anyways, the one thing I will say is, like, I'm probably going to wrap up in like 5 or 10 minutes. It was a very good chat. So send in your last questions, and then I will wrap up. My throat's getting a little sore, and I'm starving. I'm very hungry. I haven't eaten much today. But I'm excited to do a preview video. I want to see Caleb's apparent daughter talking to Bernard in the future. That'll be fun. What else did I gather from this episode? I'm trying to think. I talked about Delores. I talked about how the guy who's following her really reminds me of William. I talked about that dynamic. Maeve and Caleb were just kind of... I don't know why Maeve's never really entertained me. Like, I've always been into Delores, but not Maeve. So, I don't know. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Programmer says, do you think Charlotte Delores can be redeemed? So Charloris or whatever, this villain. No, I don't think so. This isn't Star Wars. I think the showrunners need a villain, right? And they gave us Charlotte, which to me, like, it does make sense. Like they always told us, like they wrote the story themselves. Like the villain is Wyatt, right? And Wyatt was Delores. And this Charloris, like, she is the villain. Like, she became what they were hinting at this whole time. So, I think she is the end-all, be-all villain. And once they stop her, then the show's over. You know, that's the way I see it. Because you can't really go anywhere from there. Because, like, in the beginning of this whole show of Westworld, like in season 1, when they were in the park, I would have said the end game of this show is when the hosts escape and they end up taking over the world. That's like the end. At this point, the hosts are taking over the world. We're in a timeline where we see that humans are extinct. So then the plot now becomes, let's free the hosts, and Charlotte is the main villain. So I think Charlotte is the final frontier, like the last stop of this show. It's the final point of contention. Nancy says, what do you think is the child with the flies coming out of its mouth? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I saw it in the trailers. The kid opens its mouth and the flies come out. Like, at this point, like, my best guess is what somebody was saying above is that, you know, flies are disease, and flies are the focus of this show. Like season 2, it was the symbol of the hawk or something. This season, it's flies. So it seems to me like flies are a mechanism to control humans. I don't know how they're going to explain it. I know that they showed a bit of how Caleb was controlled as a human to be kept in line. It's like a recalibration thing. So it seems like they're using flies like a bioweapon. And that girl was a delivery device. Yeah, you know, it's cool that they're using the flies because, like I said, the symbol of the fly is different for humans and hosts. And I'm interested to see how they tie it together, right? For humans, it represents death. You know, when you decay and you die, the fly comes. But for hosts, it means life. You know, the fly is on the host, but you can only react to it and hit it once you achieve consciousness and you break your core code. So there's a complete polarity between what it means for a human and what it means for a host. So I want to see if it lives up to that kind of idea of it. Vic Disco says, how much cooler would it be if the theme music for Sergio Leone's spaghetti western plays every time the visitor did something in Westworld? That sounds great. I just don't know what Sergio Leone's spaghetti western is. But it sounds like a good idea. Richard Cheney says, any speculation on who the Senator, Caleb, and Maeve are going to see? An old host or a new character? Probably, to be honest, probably a new character to keep the plot turning. I find it funny that they put him in California. I hear that they're going through a rough time right now. But I think he's going to be a new character, kind of a plot mover. I a wealthy man. I don't know what their end game vision is. We know that William's buying up land. And we know that humanity's in a very delicate place, even though they don't really know it yet. But I take it at face value for what it was. Much like how Liam Dempsey was in season 3, right? He was a character to kind of move the plot forward, much like Sirach, who was a villain for a season and then died, right? I think the California guy is the same. Programmer says, I really like your door theory. It makes the most sense. Man, I'm shocked. I'm like, what I can truly say about that theory, I'm so proud of it. And I'm proud of it because if I see anyone talk about it, I know it came from me. I know that is my theory. I was like obsessing over the show, and then I came up with that theory, and I had so many people tell me like, oh, that's terrible. He's abusive to her. How could they this? How could they that? I'm like, no, it's a poetic, screwed up love story. And I'm just shocked because I dismissed my theory right away after season 2. But like, man, after season 3, after season 4, like it seems like my theory still holds water. To the point where it's like, oh shit, maybe I made a theory for the end of the show. So like, that would be very cool if that happened, but we'll see. Cosman22 said, when did Westworld drop off in your opinion? For me, still a fan, but it doesn't hit the same. Yeah, season 1 was the best season of anything I've ever seen. Period. It was a work of art. Season 2, it was going the same way. It basically was a work of art to me. Like, the episode with Akichita, incredible. Like, and it still gave the Westworld vibe. The only thing... Okay, I need to pull myself back from season 2, because season 2 to me was also like a work of art. The difference was it didn't end the way that I wanted it to. So I have to take out myself as a viewer and just look at it for what it was. I feel like they could have better hinted at the simulation. But, like, it was solid. Like, I loved Akichita's scenes. I loved Delores' character. I loved the progression of the show. So for me, if I were to say where it really fell off is season 3. Yeah, it fell off for me in season 3. Because it was trying... I felt like I had to suspend disbelief a bit with the show. Because I felt like they were sometimes contradictory to what they were saying. I felt like the way that humans... Okay, the way that they showed the duality of like the park in Westworld and then humans actually existing in a park. Like, I felt like it was very on the nose and almost like they were trying to communicate like an idea rather than like be realistic. Like, there were some times where I feel like it just didn't hit. And I feel like they weren't as clear as they could have been with like Rehoboam. Like, there's a reason why I know, like, season 1 was the maze. Season 2 was the door. Season 3 was Like, I know what happened in season 1 and season 2. Season 3, the plot points, they weren't as consistent. They weren't as sharp. It was more confusing. There was more, like, it wasn't as, it just wasn't as perfect. Like, I don't know. Like, for me, it was season 3 where it fell off. And then the fact that this season just randomly, like, it ended with buildings on fire and then we just start 7 years later. Like, even that is kind of shocking. So, I don't know. Austin says, isn't that girl who has flies come out of her mouth Caleb's daughter, or is that someone else? If it's Caleb's daughter, is the daughter we see in episode 1 already a host? I don't think it's Caleb's daughter. I think it's someone else. But I don't know. Like, I'd have to see the video again. But I do like the idea of Maeve's daughter being an adult with Bernard. I think that's cool. Programmer of video games. Ford wanted a robot society all along anyway. Well, yeah, because he felt like that's the epitome of why season 3 fell through for me, because Ford believed, even in episode 1 of season 1, he says this to Bernard. He said, humans are done. We're done. We've cured every disease. We've cured every ailment. But he believes, he says this in another speech. I know way too much about this show. He said that humans are like peacocks. They have pretty feathers, but they eat worms in the dirt and the muck, right? And he believed that humans reach the peak of evolution because you can never get rid of your biological drives. You can never get rid of your will for survival and your will for reproduction. And it is those binds that are holding humanity back. And I agree with that. And then season 3 completely went against that and showed us Caleb. To the point where, like, there's almost no distinction between a biological human and a conscious host anymore. Like, they're basically the same. So I just feel like they took it in a direction where it's not as strong as it could have been, you know? And it becomes more murky. So, yeah, I don't know. But programmer said, I'll be honest, season 3 was okay, but it wasn't as hype to me like season 1 and 2. Season 4 is a good start so far. Hope we get more episodes instead of 8. I actually don't know how many episodes we get. I think we actually do have 8, but I could be wrong. I don't know. B said, I believe season 2 to be intentionally scrambled like Bernard's memory, and that's why I love it as much as 1. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, the story was told in the same way, because we weren't following Delores becoming conscious, we were following Bernard. And that's why I loved it so much too, right? Because it had that era of Westworld to it. And that's the thing I worry about, is like, they did studies on people's engagement of a show or of movies, and people get really engaged when you repeat a task over and over again. Like, that, honestly, that's probably why Top Gun did so well. Top Gun, essentially, they practice the same course every single time. And then the movie ends with them doing the course in real life. It's the repetition that keeps the audience member engaged, right? And they did that in season 1 and season 2. And I hope that they're doing that in season 4 for the right reasons. I hope they're not just kind of shoehorning it in to bring people back. I like season 2 first watch, and it's even better on the second watch. Yeah, I think that's what I need to do, right? Season 2 was tainted because it didn't unfold the way I wanted it to in the end. Literally the last... Yeah, oh my god, I need more water. So, episode 9... This is what was good about it. See, episode 7 or episode 8 focused on Akichita, and it was an amazing episode. And then episode 9 of season 2 was William's episode, and it was incredible. Like, I loved that episode. Literally, my disappointment in season 2 just came from episode 10, because it literally, if you go back and you binge watch my season 2 review videos and breakdown videos, everything, my door to Delores theory, everything was proven right. And then William's episode came out, episode 9, and that episode validated my theory. I took it to the bank. I'm like, I'm right. I'm totally right. And then they took it and they butchered William's character after that. They had his fingers cut off, and then he was just done. And then I was confused. And then the end of season 3, they killed him in a post-credit scene. Like, you don't do something that important, like kill off a character like William, in a post-credit scene. Like, that's part of the reason why I was so upset. And I felt like with season 3 in particular, it came to a culmination of, like, surprise scenes where I was like, how did this add up? Like, it just didn't. Like, I was really confused. Nancy says, what do you think is Bernard's urgency when he says we're running out of time? Jeez. At this point, who knows? Who knows? Bernard's the guy he's basically the peacemaker. He's the guy to bridge the humans and the host together, because he himself is a bridge between both. He's not Arnold. He's Bernard. but he has parts of Arnold in him. And he's kind of the peacemaker. That's why Delores kept him around. He's useful, like he's valuable, and he's going to do something to save society, you know? I would say him saying that they're running out of time, I think that's predicated on Charlotte, because I think Charlotte is the issue. Like, she's the one who's pushing and pushing and pushing and trying to achieve something. So I think his mission is to stop Charlotte, and then hopefully there's a way to save the humans by having them go through the door, or you have them just live out their lives. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Vic Katmandu says, any chance Bernard saying what tower while standing right next to it? So I don't know if it's going to be Bernard, but I think that's a great idea. And I would lean towards that happening. Because every cityscape we looked at, there was no tower. I think it's very likely that we would have a character be like, what tower? And then Caleb sees the tower. You know? So yeah, I don't know. Vic says, do you think they'll make a season 5? Things don't look good in the ratings department. Viewership dropped off again when episode 1 premiered. Yeah, I heard viewership dropped off too, and God, in season 3, I was worried if we were going to get a season 4. But we got a season 4. So what I would say is I think we will get an end to Westworld. I think HBO would greenlight one more season to end it. Because you're not going to end it during the finale. Like, I think they had a goal of making it to season 5. I think they'll get that green light. B says he liked the episode 10 season 2 speech that Delores gave. I don't even remember it. Programmer Video Game says, Ford says, find the door, William. Man in Black says, okay. Several episodes later, he gets shot by Maeve, and Lawrence and William says, I forgot my task. I'll shoot my daughter instead. Yeah, see? That's exactly why I was really annoyed. V. Katmandu says, we will see another angle of the Man in Black passing his fidelity test in Westworld Park and what caused his destruction. Yeah, I agree. I think that storyline of fidelity, I think that's, you know what? I think also, if I can verbalize my issue with season 2, Season 2 is like a fine wine, and it's going to get better with age. Like, the reason why Season 1 was so great is because Season 1 had a beginning, middle, and end, and it completely stands on its own. It doesn't need a sequel. It doesn't need to explain anything. It didn't leave anything open. It was a great story, beginning, middle, and end, and it ended with a host uprising in Delores shooting the park owner. Like, they didn't need a sequel. Whereas Season 2... setting up with James Delos, the fidelity testing, William and Ford's game for the door. Half of those weren't answered, and that's why I was annoyed, is because it wasn't a finished, cohesive story like what we were used to. So I think that's one of the main reasons why, is it's like, Season 2 was an amazing season, but it's set up, now that I'm starting to realize now, at the time I was pissed off because I thought they were setting up all these things that they just forgot about. In reality, they're setting up things that they're going to pay off in Season 4, Season 5. Which is like, okay, but it makes it less of a standalone, right? Instead of just focusing on the maze and then that answer being resolved. They focused on the door and then they didn't resolve it. So, I think that was my biggest point of contention with that. But, it is 9 o'clock. We've been going on for an hour and a half. That was a great stream. I think I'm going to wrap here. I definitely need some more water. And more. I'm starving too. But it was a great stream. Great start. I'm excited to see how these streams go. I'm going to do one a week. And I'm excited to see the growth of the channel. Like, obviously, the viewership in Westworld is dropping. But I know we also have some Game of Thrones fans here. So I'm going to be doing... Westworld videos, many Westworld videos every week to cover it. I am debating on doing Game of Thrones reaction videos. I haven't watched Season 7 or Season 8 since it aired. So I'm thinking about, if I start with Season 7, Episode 6, I can do an episode a week, reacting to it, giving my thoughts after like 2 years, and I'll be finally done the show by the time House of the Dragon airs. And then at that point, you know, we'll probably have bigger live streams. We'll get our numbers up. We'll have more conversation, and I'll be doing these for 3 hours instead of an hour and a half. Plus, we're probably going to have more to talk about for Westworld next episode, right? So that is exciting. But yeah, thank you everyone for being here. Programmer of Video Games, Richard Cheney, Nancy, Vic Disco, Vic Mondu, B. Thank you everyone. This was a great time, and I look forward to the stream next week, and I look forward to Westworld. More videos are going to be dropping later this week, but until next time, I'll see you guys later.